Welcome to the Do Zone, where entrepreneurs go to get things done. I'm your host, Josh Thomas. You can find me on all social media at JT Literally. Each week, I bring on experts from a variety of backgrounds to share their secrets on how to optimize performance so you can take massive action and crush your goals. If you want to build a slingshot that brings in quick cash and sales for your business in as little as the next 7 days, I'm going to give you a simple framework that has worked for me very well and my clients time and time again. At no cost to you, go to factor1.io now and enter your email for immediate access. Once again, that's factor1.io. Today's guest is Alaric Heck. Alaric got his start on YouTube over 14 years ago by building AppFind, which became the largest app review channel on the platform with over 500,000 subscribers. Now, at just 26 years old, he has built an 8-figure company, Ad Outreach, where he empowers entrepreneurs to harness the power of value-driven video and grow their businesses on YouTube. Alaric, welcome to the Do Zone. Tell us something you believe is the key to getting stuff done that most people wouldn't think of.
So the key is to de-risk the outcome of doing whatever you need to do and actually taking action. So one of the biggest things that actually causes people to not take action is by worrying about what if this works, right, as a success, or what if it's a failure. Well, what you need to do is actually change your concept of what a failure is, because there's really only two true failures. It's either to give up, which is the ultimate failure, or the failure to learn. If you're instead winning or learning, then every action you take creates a positive outcome. Either it's a success in its own right, or it's a lesson, a learning lesson that you can build on to either know what not to do, what you should do differently next time, or even just a general lesson that you're going to be able to take from that action. So when you de-risk the outcome and you tell yourself, everything I do is going to be a positive outcome, whether it is a directly positive outcome, a win, or it's a learning lesson I can build on, then that takes away all the risk and fear of taking action. So you could just start taking more and more action consistently.
You know, it's one of the most important things that I had to learn long ago is I lost a decade, so I didn't start, an 8-figure company in my dorm room. It took me a little longer to get where I was going, but I spent a decade just wondering, well, what if it doesn't work? And and that cost me 10 years of my life. And you know what the answer is? It's probably not going to work. Just keep doing it until it does. And tell me, and like, first of all, like, you're speaking my language on that. And could you point to a couple of examples where you had to face a decision of, hey, this may not work and it may sting a little bit, but I got to move forward anyway and get the data.
Yeah, and so there's a couple really good examples of that, and one was kind of the decision to build the business from the beginning, and then I'll also talk about a decision that I also see a lot of people face every day as we go into marketing and ads and kind of what we do. But first, I'll start with kind of the big decision that I had. I started out like you mentioned, I started out 14 years ago, built an app review channel on YouTube, grew it to hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I had a lot of people watching. And I had this app and that I didn't make, but somebody had like sponsored me to do this app, and I posted on the channel. It got a bunch of downloads. I'm like, this is great. Can you post this other app? And so they were getting a bunch of these, viewerships, a bunch of views and downloads. I mean to say, a lot of viewership there. And they said, well, how can we reach more people? I said, well, what if we run a YouTube ad? It was about 8 years ago now, so I was in college at the time. I run a YouTube ad. They get thousands of downloads. They're blown away. So they say, this is great. We're going to make you basically an offer that they thought I couldn't refuse. They said, Alaric, we want you to drop out of college, fly out here to Silicon Valley, join our team. They're like, we're all in our 20s. You're going to fit right in. This will be great. You join our team. We're going to give you a 6-figure salary, potential vested stock options in the company that's done a few rounds of raising funds. And you get to keep your YouTube channel and still do that on the side. They made what they thought was an irresistible offer, and I turned it down. And I actually turned it down 3 times. It got better over time. That's the offer they ended with. But I turned it down, and I knew I wanted to build this myself. Now, there was some concern because I was turning down this thing that I thought maybe I wanted. I'd always looked up and idolized kind of Silicon Valley, and, the thought of, okay, maybe drop out of college, go do that. I could still do my channel. But at the same time, I knew I wanted to build something myself, and I knew I had struck gold because they were so excited and they wanted it for themselves, right? They wanted the YouTube ads knowledge for themselves. So I said, you know what? I want to build this myself. And even if this doesn't, become as big as like their company or whatever that is, like I'm going to actually learn a lot more because I know that I want to run, I want to continue to run businesses. I want to, be an entrepreneur. I want to, have my companies. And so even if my company's smaller, I'd rather be the king of my own castle, even if it's a smaller castle than a knight in somebody else's. And I think that that was, a big decision that I had had. And then there's been a lot of different pieces of taking action, of different risks, different things. We really scaled during COVID, and so that was like a big kind of scale period of time when a lot of people were pulling back. And that was, again, I said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to learn, we're going to see how this works. And my hypothesis, which ended up being correct, was that, people were going to really shift towards video, and marketing was going to shift to that. And that was correct. But even if that wasn't the case, you know, I was going to learn from that, right, too. And it's like, all right, well, this is really the only clear, this is the clear direction here is to ramp up. Now, the decision I see a lot of people take, because we help businesses with YouTube ads, and I'm happy to dive into some of that too. Like what we do is we're advising people to invest in their marketing and advertising, creating a system where they run ads and then they have a certain outcome. And the goal is, right, you put in $1, you get multiple out. And it also takes a little bit of time to build up to that, right? And what we do is we're here to help shortcut and help, fast track that process. But also people are a little bit afraid. They're afraid to spend that initial dollar. And so ultimately, what we have to tell them is that the same mindset applies to virtually everything, and it applies to marketing and advertising too. If you're looking to launch a campaign, you don't want to just launch one campaign. You want to launch a few. You want to you have a few different videos, have a few different audience targeting, and a few different campaigns. And then those campaigns, let's say you're throwing darts at a dartboard. Now, because you're working with a guide, you know where the dartboard is, you know roughly how to throw. It's not going to be perfect the first time, but let's say you're throwing those darts, a few, maybe they missed the board. All right, well, we learned what didn't work. What are we going to do with those campaigns? If those campaigns don't get a return, we're going to turn them off. And we're going to look at what did we target? What was the video? All right, we don't want to use that. Then you might get, lucky on that first throw. You might hit a bullseye. Great. Wow, what happened here? This is great. That's a win. Let's scale that up. But even if that doesn't happen, usually what's going to happen is you got a few of these darts on the outer rims. And you're going to look at that and you're saying, oh, wait a second. This looks like it's working well. This one looks like it's working well over here. What if we combine the things that work? This video works, this audience works. Let's combine those. And now we're learning how to throw a dart. And now once we actually calibrate ourselves, we get to keep throwing darts at the bullseye. So what we need to do is cut what doesn't work, but learn from it, adjust what's in the middle area. And then once you hit the bullseye, just keep repeating that action and scaling that up. And that is really a good example of how this works. But if you're afraid to miss the target, which is going to happen, like you said, then you might never throw, but you might never actually get good and hit the bullseye, and then learn how to repeat that again and again.
Yeah, it's one of the craziest things, and I think you really nailed it with most of us are just afraid to spend that initial dollar. Like, what if I don't get it back? Hey, listen, you're probably not going to get it back. But that's the only way that you can find out how to get more of it back in time. I remember I was running my very first ad on Facebook, and I wrote 15 different ads. And I thought, oh man, dude, this is it, Alaric. This is the one. This is the chosen ad that is going to change my life. This is Shakespeare in the 21st century. And it was like long form, and it was just dripping with value and all of these things. And I put that in. I put a bunch of other ones. I went and shot a video and had it like professionally edited. And of all of those, the one that just slays to this day, it slays all of the rest of them is this simple framework is what has been responsible for all of my success. Do you want it? That was it. Like, that was the whole copy. Like, everything else I did was completely irrelevant, but I had to do it to get to that, like, 1 or 2 sentence thing. And that 1 to 2 sentences was all I needed, but I had to do the rest of the work.
Exactly. And it's so remarkable how often that is the case. And but you have to do all those other things to see what works, because you might not know exactly what it's going to be. And so that's where, if you look at it as everything's going to create, a win or a learning lesson, well, then your only thing stopping you from getting where you want to go is actually taking action. And I know it's so cliched because it's full circle, right? It's like you kind of start out on the journey, you start talking about like taking action, right? It's like cliche, but then it comes full circle because you're like, all right, well, I need to take action. I need to learn from that. I need to do this. And then it comes back around. You're like, wait a second. If every outcome is I can build on, and it's essentially building, like, to use a castle analogy, we're essentially building blocks of the castle, or we're seeing, wait a second, this isn't going to be that sturdy. Let's not use that type of brick. Let's build something else here. And so if every win is kind of building another brick, and then every learning lesson teaches us how to make the castle stronger, how to fortify it a little bit more, and how to avoid some of these other challenges, right? What we're doing is we're constantly growing, we're constantly building. And so then the only thing stopping us from getting where we want to go, even if we have more learning lessons than wins, which usually is the case, is just taking action. So then the question becomes, how fast can you rapidly take action? But also, the other thing that people get wrong is you have to learn when things don't work. And you got to learn the right lesson. You got to get good at learning what is the lesson. And so inside of our company, inside Ad Outreach, what I always ask is, well, what's the learning lesson here? When things don't go according to plan, I think in other places or other organizations, it's, kind of like, oh, this didn't go according to plan. And there's almost this degree of like punishment around that. Instead, what I like to look at is like, what's the learning lesson? Like, what did you learn? Okay, great. And then, again, obviously we don't want people to make the same mistake multiple times. And that's where we need to say, okay, well, did we actually learn from this? And that's where, we might, again, you don't want to let people make that same mistake. But if they make a mistake once, that's a learning lesson that they can then use. And it's far more valuable. The mistake's already been made, right? It's far more valuable to ask them, what's the learning lesson? And then, wait a second, you just actually up-leveled that employee or that team member. You just up-leveled them more often than if they had gotten a win. You got to also ask them when they get a win, okay, what went well here? What can we keep doing? Right.
Yeah.
And wins and learning lessons is definitely something just to keep, not just yourself, but as you grow a team, keep asking your team, what are they seeing? What are the wins? What are the learning lessons?
So just real quick here, your company Ad Outreach is basically an overnight success that took 14 years, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. People don't see all that, and that side of it, and being on YouTube since like 2009 and all of that. Exactly. It's grown a lot over these last few years, but
60th
exactly.
60th fastest growing company in America, featured in the Inc. 5000. What would you say if you were to look back on the journey that you've taken to this point? Somebody wants to get the kind of momentum that you have. Can you point back to a catalyst that really put things into hyperdrive for you? Like, was there a realization? Was there a moment? Was there a turning point?
Yes. So, and it's actually all related to this too. So I was at an event, and this was with Jay Abraham, and this was, it was in Paris. It's like this Paris mastermind event. It was the end of 2019. So it was like October of 2019. So right before, you remember, I told you I doubled down and scaled up, during 2020. And that actually came from a lesson that I learned here. So I had a hot seat with Jay, and I was telling him at the time, I was spending around, about like $25,000 on ads a month, and I was bringing in around like $200,000. And I was like, oh, I've got a great return, and things that like and like things are good, like I'm gonna keep building up. But I was approaching it as look, I've got a strong ROAS, I'm helping out all these, I'm doing all these different things. And he asked me, and I thought I was doing a lot of things like kind of correctly, right? And there's a little bit of invisible ego there. And he like checked that, because he said, why not spend 50,000? And I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, why not spend 50,000? And obviously he said it his own Jay way. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
it's been a few years now.
Jay's the kind of guy that he'll walk around the point for a couple of hours, and then you're like, you got it yet?
Yeah, exactly. So he told a whole story around it, but essentially the gist was, why not spend 50,000? And I was just, it shocked me. I was like, well, and where we've been ramping up about $5,000 a month. He said, and essentially what he said is what he would do is he would just raise it to 50,000 and see what happens. And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, why would you not do that? And and then I gave him these reasons. It's like, oh, I don't, we're already at capacity with our sales team. I'm enrolling better than my, other person. I was in the process of building the sales
Yeah.
team and
Blah, blah,
transitioning
blah, blah,
that,
blah. Yeah.
all of
Excuses,
that, all the
excuses.
stuff, all the
Right.
excuses, right? And what he said is, well, let's take a look at this for a second. And he introduced a concept of risk arbitrage, which was, I think, that big difference maker. So he introduced the concept. He had said, well, let's think about it for a second. If you spend another $25,000 on your ads, you spend 50,000. Let's just use that 25,000. What is the best case scenario that happens? And I said, well, it'd probably be doubling the revenue, be 200,000, but with diminishing return, like we know that there's a reason we're at 25K right now, and there's also the sales team stuff, so that might not happen. He's like, well, what's the best case? 200,000. And then he said, well, what's the worst case? Like, what's the that you can imagine? You put another 25,000 in, with the way your business is set up. And I said, honestly, it's really hard to picture doing anything less than a 2x, like 50,000, that's if we can't figure out the sales, like to 25 to 50. So, and then he turns to the room and he's like, would who here would not take that 25,000 for $50,000, and then that's when I'm realizing, like I'm turning red a little bit. I'm in the hot seat at that moment.
Uh-huh.
And then
it's getting really hot too.
Exactly. And then he said, okay, and what do you think is most likely going to happen? And I said, honestly, it's probably going to be more like 100,000. It's going to be somewhere in between, right? It's it's not going to be as efficient as that lower spend. There's some diminishing returns on the ad side. There's also the sales team, the different things. And he said, all right, so most likely you're going to get that extra 100. It's going to be that 100,000, and then lower probability you're still making money. Even if that doesn't happen, even if it's worse than what you can imagine there, then you're breaking even, right? But you learned, and then you can go up to the 200,000. So ultimately what he said was, why not take that bet? Because this is risk arbitrage, right? If you could walk into a casino and you knew that you're going to be able to go and you had an advantage against them, you're just going to keep going, right? You have a house edge. And so essentially we have this risk arbitrage here where even the lowercase scenario is a positive scenario. So you would take that bet every time. And that's also how people are able to scale, is they'll find a risk arbitrage opportunity where they risk far less or potentially nothing in this case, but stand to gain so much more. And that was a massive learning lesson. And I ramped up. Sure enough, I got up to 300K. And then we were capped out on the sales team side. And so then, we went into those next couple months, we were around that 300K. And then that's when we're like, all right, we're going to scale up over the course of 2020. And by the end of the year, we're doing over $800,000 a month in revenue. And, awesome. We just basically massively grew that business. So
that's a great story, man. And it's a great lesson from Jay Abraham. Sometimes, and I've spent some time with Jay, a very fascinating dude. And sometimes you just need somebody to put things to you in the simplest term. Just speak ape. Growing a business isn't that hard. Grab a club, whack somebody on the head, take their money, go repeat. That's it, right? So tell us really quick what it is that you do, how people can connect with you, who you work with.
Yeah, so we help businesses with YouTube ads so they can get more consistent leads and sales. YouTube is more intent-based. So instead of people kind of scrolling on other platforms, you're going to be able to reach people when they're in the learner's mindset and then have them take action. We really specialize in information, expert, coach, consultant, course creator businesses. And we have a free gift I'd love to give everybody here, 19-page YouTube ad strategy PDF. And you can get that by going to adoutreach.com/gift. That's ADOUTREACH.com/GIFT, adoutreach.com/gift. You can get my free 19-page YouTube ad strategy PDF.
Excellent. We're going to wrap up from here. Thanks so much to Alaric Heck for sharing that giant nugget of wisdom for taking action, even though you're not necessarily ready for it, because you're either going to win or you're going to learn. For those of you who want to learn more about YouTube ads, you can take advantage of Alaric's generosity by going to adoutreach.com/gift. And whether you're out on your morning commute in the gym or somewhere out in the field, snap a selfie, tag me at JT Literally. Show me what you do while you're in the do zone. And one more time, if you need a quick injection of cash in your business so you can get some momentum now, let's talk. Go to factor1.io and let's take a look at building your slingshot. Know this, you are Factor One for your own success. Now let's get to work.